Now, they weigh about 22 to 2,400 pounds. They eat 5 gallons of grain a day, and they each eat a bale of hay every day. They're a team of oxen. An ox is any cow that's trained to pull, and that's what they are. 150 years ago, this is what our ancestors liked to use instead of horses, because they could travel farther, you could train them sooner, and they're just a lot better animal for pulling wagons than the horse was. Now they are slower. Contrary to what you see in the movies, if your parents decided to go from Illinois to California, that meant you got to walk from Illinois to California, because all the equipment went in the wagon, and the only time you got to go in the wagon is whenever you went to sleep.
In 1864 was when the Civil War was going on. You guys heard of the Civil War? Yeah, well, that was a long time ago. In the Civil War, they wore uniforms like this. They didn't have camouflage. They didn't wear green and that kind of stuff. This is what they looked like. The dark blue coats and the light blue pants. This is a model 1861 cavalry saber, and I got a sword knot here so I don't drop it when I use it. And this was used against men on foot. If I were on my horse and he's down there, I try to stick him with that. And what I do before I get to him, I pull this pistol out and I get ready for him. And if I miss him with a sword, I shoot him as I go by. A model 1860 Colt 44 caliber cap and ball. They're nothing like what is carried now. They are used with black powder, loose powder, and separate bullets poured down in here, placed here, tamped down, each one round by round, then loaded with caps like these on the ends of each one of these. And it takes several minutes to load each one. And because of that, because loading one of these in the middle of a fight when somebody's trying to kill you is kind of difficult, a lot of the men, if they could afford it, if they were wealthy enough and could afford more than one pistol, might carry 2 or 3 or 4 on their belts when they go into combat, all loaded. They didn't have clips, they didn't have automatics, they didn't have anything like that. That's what they had to do. This is an example of another popular sword of the era. This is a model 1840 cavalry saber carried in the Mexican War, also used in the Civil War. What I'm wearing is called a shell jacket. It's a short jacket, so it makes it easy to get on a horse, so I don't have all of that stuff in my way. So I can wear this and ride my horse with all my equipment. I'm also, absolutely, easier to get everything to everything. I'm also wearing riding pants, and you can't see them very well, but cavalry boots here.
Do you know that there's a very good possibility that Abraham Lincoln actually used this to ride on in the courthouse up here in Mount Vernon? This came out of the courthouse in Mount Vernon. I'm Abraham Lincoln. You know who he was? Well, probably not. That's probably before your time, okay? Abraham Lincoln was born Hodgenville, Kentucky, 1809, February the 12th, and he lived there till he was about 7 years old. Abraham Lincoln moved to Indiana when he was about 7 years old. He lived there till he was about 20 years old. He helped his father build a log cabin there. Thomas Lincoln built another cabin, but by this time Abraham Lincoln's 21 years old. So he said, "Dad, I'm a grown man now. I can go on my own." And he did. He went over to New Salem. At New Salem he became a surveyor, a postmaster, store clerk, worked in a sawmill, worked in a grist mill, and while he was there, he carried the post office in his hat. When the mail would come in, Abraham Lincoln would put the letters in his hat, put the hat on his head, and as he went about town, when he saw somebody that had some mail, he'd take his hat off and give him his letter. What they're reenacting out there today with all those cannons and those horses and those guns, do you know how many people died during the Civil War? 600,000. That's a lot of people. That's more people than died in World War I and World War II and Korea and Vietnam and all the other wars that the United States has been engaged in combined.
So, it was Dr. Mugg's house that he went to and showed up that night kind of all dirty and grungy, and he said that he had fallen, his horse had rolled, and that he had broken his ankle. Well, now, have all of you heard about when John Wilkes Booth broke his ankle? Most people all know about the fact that John Wilkes Booth broke his ankle. Most people say it was when he leapt from the box onto the stage. It was a 12-foot jump. But John Wilkes Booth grew up on a farm. He was a very athletic actor. This was nothing for him to jump 12 feet. And actually, there were about 200 people, at least, in the theater that night. All of them wrote accounts. There were books written on nothing but accounts of the assassination. None of them mentioned the fact that he limped off the stage, or that he had any problem getting off the stage. They say that he turned, faced the audience, that he turned, ran off. He actually had to fight himself off the stage because the other actors tried to stop him. How that story got started was this man showed up at Dr. Mudd's house. Dr. Mudd was extremely scared of what might happen to him for harboring the assassin of the President of the United States. He didn't know this necessarily when Booth showed up, but he certainly knew it by the time he came back and ordered them off of his property. He didn't turn them in, he just told them to leave. And then he neglected to tell the government anything about this little situation that was going on at his farm. He told 3 different stories, which is actually probably how he ended up being in prison for the time that he was, because he came forward with no real information and he kept telling different stories. So you have all these different stories, so no one believed any story that he said. So the general concept that Mr. Booth broke his leg when he jumped from the theater became the popular story.